Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my amendment is pretty simple. It would prohibit any funds from being used to install, maintain, or support any communications infrastructure in DoD facilities that don't follow security protocols. And it prohibits the Secretary of Defense from communicating about classified military operational plans using insecure methods. I'm proud to represent San Diego, the biggest military community in the country. And when I go home, it's my job to look those military family members in the eye and tell them I'm doing everything in my power to keep their loved ones safe. That's why I find it so disgraceful that Secretary Hegseth was so cavalier and reckless with sensitive information about an imminent military strike, jeopardizing operational integrity and potentially putting our service members' lives at risk. I would expect our top military advisor in this country to have the utmost care and caution and reverence for our service members' safety. But as we all know, that is not the type of Secretary of Defense that we have. In April, the Associated Press reported that Secretary Hegseth used Signal to discuss classified military operations and had an internet connection that bypassed the Pentagon security protocols set up in his office to use Signal on his personal computer. That shows a blatant disregard for our security protocols that shouldn't be repeated. I know every person on this committee cares deeply about the safety of our service members, so I hope that there will be unanimous support for my amendment to protect classified information and the safety of our service members. I yield back.
Chair recognizes himself. Much like the previous amendment, this is just another political attack on the Secretary of Defense. Everyone with a clearance is briefed on proper handling of classified information and must sign an appropriate oath. We should let the ongoing review play out. Any action before that process is complete would be premature. I oppose the amendment and now recognize gentlelady from Pennsylvania, Ms. Houlihan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I am rising in support of Ms. Jacobs' amendment, which is a more narrowed version of Mr. Ryan's 5494. As she mentioned, it prohibits the SecDef from communicating about classified material using personal devices and insecure methods, and it states that no funds can be used to install or to maintain or support any communications infrastructure in DoD facilities that are not in compliance with relevant standards. Rules for thee and not for me seems to be the law of the land right now when it comes to the Secretary of Defense. When I held a top secret clearance in the Air Force, how to manage sensitive information was practically drilled into me, as it is into all of our service members. And if I had done what Secretary Hegseth did as a junior officer, I would have resigned and likely expected to be prosecuted and perhaps jailed. Secretary Hegseth seems to have forgotten his training, or perhaps has no regard for how it applies to him, all while he talks relentlessly about leaks and accuses people of being untrustworthy and disloyal to the administration and to this nation. More than once, he's used a publicly available and non-secure and non-approved messaging app to share details about forthcoming military action, despite having every tool at his own disposal to have these classified conversations in secure networks. His negligence could have put our service members at risk, and it could have killed them. But he and other members of the administration have continued to downplay the situation, including in front of this committee. If members of this committee were really true to themselves, I very much believe that they know that we shouldn't even have to have this amendment codified. But sadly, with this particular Secretary of Defense, here we are. This is where we are. And we should collectively, bipartisanly, be supportive of it. What Secretary Hegseth did has had no repercussions for him. So I guess we genuinely, legitimately need a law. I believe that if Secretary Hegseth had any decency, he would have long ago resigned over this conduct or had some sort of announcement of reform. But until then, I guess we need a very specific law. So I ask the committee to be supportive of this amendment. And as Mr. Bacon said, if there are other ways other than the previous amendment to perhaps be supportive without restricting the funding at a 75% level, he perhaps would be supportive of that. I would ask the committee members to really think within themselves, dig deep, and understand that we only need a couple of us to step forward, in addition to the ones who already have, to decry this particular behavior and to support this particular amendment. And with that, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair, now recognize gentleman from Georgia, Dr. McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is an investigation. There has been change. there will be accountability. I've seen mishaps and mistakes made in the military where we had top-down reviews. We have a voluntary review process ongoing right now, and we do not make permanent changes until the formal review process is complete. Now, unlike a review process when I believe Secretary Hillary Clinton was in charge and evidence was destroyed, I think this will be a much more transparent and open investigation. Legislating this issue is inflammatory and could interfere with an ongoing DoD Inspector General's investigation. It's not appropriate until the investigation is complete. I urge a no vote on this amendment.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Vindeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've already commented, at least for now, on Signalgate sufficiently, but I do want to point out one more time. Now, this is based on my experience as both a White House lawyer and a Department of Defense lawyer, that the investigation by the Department of Defense, IG, is not capable of getting down to drilling down to all the details that we need. They have no purview to be able to investigate other departments or agencies or the White House National Security Council. So the only way to go about this, the only way to get a complete and full investigation is to have Congress investigate. And one more point on the whataboutism on previous administrations. I think we need to deal with the here and now. Let's talk about accountability for the current failings. Thank you. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Cisneros.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like everybody on this committee knows that whenever we go into a classified briefing, whenever we go to read classified materials, we are walking into a skiff in order to do that. That means removing your cell phone, removing any phone, anything with a Bluetooth connection. You have to take it off your personal self before you enter the room. At the Pentagon, when I was there, my office was a skiff. I couldn't walk into I couldn't walk in with my personal cell phone. I had to take my Fitbit off. I had to take my headphones out of my pocket. The Secretary's office is a skiff. He cannot take any of his personal devices into his office. When he walks into his office, or at least when I was there, Secretary Austin would take everything off his body, hand it to his person, and he would put it outside the office where it would stay until he left. Same thing with the Deputy Secretary. The fact that the current Secretary of Defense would put a dirty line in his office in order so that he could communicate inside a skiff is just unimaginable and without any comprehension for the law at all. And so, this is very simple. Take it out of your office. Admit that you were wrong. Live by the standards that the E1s and the O1s and everybody else in the military has to live by. You are supposed to be there leading by example. Get it together and do this. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Moulton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just want to respond to some of the concerns from across the aisle. Yes, it's true that there is an investigation ongoing. The investigation has been going on for quite some time. It's hard to see that it's not been dragged out. But what we're asking with this amendment is not a change in policy, as Mr. McCormick has suggested. The policy is very clear. There's no one in this room who would imagine sitting in a skiff and having unclassified internet piped into that room. I'm sure General Bergman had a skiff in his command. I'm sure he didn't request unclassified internet piped into that room. I'm sure that Mr. McCormick didn't suggest having unclassified internet piped into his ready room so that classified mission data could easily be shared with friends, wives, supporters, whoever it is. So there's no change in policy, but the reason the amendment is necessary is because this secretary has, in fact, done these things. He's done something that, as long as it exists, is a national security threat to the United States. We know on this committee, because we get the classified briefings, just how sophisticated our adversaries are. Some people on the other side of the aisle feel confident that the Secretary has learned his lesson, and yet there is no accountability, so it's hard to understand that he has. If, though, in fact, they're true that he has learned his lesson, then there's no consequence to this amendment because it simply says that the Secretary is going to follow the procedures that everyone else in the military, including my colleagues who have served, have had to follow for their entire careers. So it's just hard for me to understand what the objections to this are unless they are purely political, unless you're just afraid of crossing Trump or Hegseth. This should be something that the Secretary, the President, would take in stride if indeed changes have been made, if indeed accountability is accepted, and if indeed we on this committee care about the chance that this does happen in the future. The classified mission details are released. We're lucky that those missions were just over Yemen for a mission that my colleague said was very successful, even though there has not been a single U.S. flagged ship that has transited the Red Sea since expending hundreds of millions of dollars worth of ammunition that we really need to deter China. But putting that aside, imagine if this mission had been over China or Russia. Those pilots would be dead. And yet I still wonder if the Secretary would have apologized to the mother of those pilots, of that pilot. This is about accountability, yes, but it's about just basic common sense. So let's take the politics out of it and just do the right thing, not for the Secretary, but for every young man and woman who serves under him. I think that's our responsibility on this committee. And Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Any other members seeking recognition on the Jacobs amendment? Seeing none, the question occurs on the amendment by Ms. Jacobs. So many is in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
Opinion of the chair is the amendment is not agreed to. A recorded vote is requested. The recorded vote will be postponed to a later time.
Representative Sara Jacobs, Democrat, California, introduced an amendment aimed at strengthening security protocols within the Department of Defense. Her proposal would prohibit funds from being used to install, maintain, or support communications infrastructure in DoD facilities that does not meet security standards. Additionally, it would forbid the Secretary of Defense from communicating classified military operational plans using insecure methods. Jacobs emphasized her personal connection to the military community in San Diego, the largest in the country, stating that it is her responsibility to ensure the safety of service members and their families. She expressed deep concern over Secretary Pete Hegseth's alleged misuse of unsecured messaging platforms to discuss sensitive military operations, a practice she described as reckless and potentially endangering lives. Reports indicated that Hegseth used Signal on a personal device that bypassed Pentagon security protocols, demonstrating a blatant disregard for established procedures. Support for the amendment came from Representative Hullen, who highlighted that it represents a narrower version of a previous proposal. Hullen underscored the importance of adhering to secure communication methods, pointing out that Hegseth's behavior was inconsistent with the rigorous training that all military personnel receive. She criticized the Secretary for repeatedly using unapproved messaging platforms and downplaying the risks posed by such negligence, arguing that codifying these security standards into law was necessary. Opposition arose from other members, including Representative McCormick, who cautioned that the ongoing Department of Defense Inspector General review should be allowed to conclude before legislation is enacted. He warned that premature action could interfere with the formal investigative process. Representative Vindeman added that the IG scope is limited and that only Congress could conduct a comprehensive investigation across all relevant departments, ensuring full accountability for any failures. Several representatives shared first-hand experiences to illustrate the importance of strict security measures. Representative Cisneros recalled that during his tenure at the Pentagon, all personal devices were barred from classified areas, and even small items like Fitbits were removed to maintain operational security. He criticized Hegseth's alleged use of unsecured communications as a failure to adhere to standards that all military personnel, regardless of rank, are expected to follow. Representative Moulton stressed that the amendment does not alter existing policy but reinforces compliance. He argued that past lapses by the Secretary posed a serious national security threat, particularly given the sophistication of U.S. adversaries. Moulton emphasized that accountability was not only a matter of policy but also of common sense, urging colleagues to support measures that would prevent the mishandling of classified information and protect service members' lives. Despite these arguments, when the amendment was brought to a vote, the chair ruled it not agreed to, with a recorded vote postponed for a later time. The discussion highlighted deep concerns over operational security and accountability, as well as differing views on how best to address potential lapses by high-ranking officials.